Welcome back to this special edition of The Papers, coming live to you from Harare in Zimbabwe, where we look ahead of the elections, the historical elections that will be taking place on the 30th of July. An important election for Zimbabwe, but also an important election for Southern Africa. The SADC region quite involved, playing an integral role through its observer mission in these elections. But before we get into the role of the observer missions, let's quickly just speak about the role of journalists and how easy it may have been. Foster, you have been working in Zimbabwe for a couple of years as a journalist. If you compare the different environments, it's been 8 months since Robert Mugabe was dethroned, if you want to use that phrase, and some say that the space has been different.
Well, yes, I've covered elections for many years. The environment, yes, has changed in the sense that journalists are able to go virtually to any part of the country and cover the election story as long as they meet the requirements of the land, that is accreditation, and I hope you are accredited.
Yes, I am. There are actually 2 sets of accreditations. There are 2 sets of accreditations.
So as long as you are accredited, then you are free to move around. This is unlike in the past, where, for example, I've worked for both the public and the private media, whereby if you were from the private media, it was very difficult to access certain parts of the country, particularly in the Mashonaland areas, the home area of Robert Mugabe. You know, you were immediately labeled as a traitor, renegade, a sellout, a counter-revolutionary, and so on. So, yes, certainly the environment has changed, but it shouldn't just be a cosmetic change for the sake of these elections or for the purposes of pleasing observers and so on. This is the kind of thing that needs to continue.
But the attacks still seem to be the attacks still seem to be there. Journalists being attacked. I've seen on social media. I've been attacked a couple of times. Jeffrey, is this your experience as well?
I should quickly point out that there have been some noted changes in as far as our freedoms are concerned since Mnangagwa came to power. Journalists are free to do their work. I can safely say before Mugabe fell, it was difficult even for foreign journalists to get accreditation, to be accredited to come here to Zimbabwe, to get a visa to come and operate here in Zimbabwe. But with the Mnangagwa now in power, this has been easier for journalists to come and do their job freely. But I'm not sure if this kind of freedom will last. Perhaps they are like what Foster said. Perhaps like what my brother Foster here said. This may be a bit temporary because they want to show the world that they've changed. We've got international election observers here.
In whose interest would that be? If you take steps back to an era where journalists felt oppressed, in whose interest would it be? Because it would seem that as though that the mission of the current government is to appease international investors, to get that foreign direct investment. We know that if you look at all these manifestos, all of them center around how to improve the economy. So why would you want to take a step back and create a space where journalists feel oppressed yet again?
Remember, we are dealing with a system, with a government that have always stifled critical voices, and they wouldn't want to have journalists continuing reporting negatively about them. They might tolerate it for now. They might be patient with the journalists for now who are exposing certain traits that are bad about them. But in the long run, I foresee this is going to change.
Do you probably, Foster, you probably get the sense that the reason why government is tolerating it, because they're tolerating it because what journalists are actually unearthing are the atrocities that had been committed by the previous government under the leadership of Robert Mugabe, whereas they are bringing in a new dawn, per se.
Well, obviously, what we need to first understand is that Robert Mugabe was not working alone. He was not an island. Most of the people that are in power now are the same people that were, in fact, pillars of Robert Mugabe. So they cannot be deemed to be operating in isolation of Robert Mugabe. But be that as it may, obviously all the habits die hard. But going into this election, one gets a feeling that, of course, they are learning as they go by to sort out the perception issue about how the world views Zimbabwe. And of course, there have been attacks here and there. But one gets a sense that they want to change. Because you can't continue in this mode that we're in forever. Something will give, and it is already given. So they want to, the establishment wants to improve. You can tell from the messages from President Mnangagwa that Zimbabwe has to catch up with the rest of SADC, even overtake some of the SADC countries,
and
open
also
for
become
business.
and also become a middle class economy. That's something that he's pushing for as well.
And so he can't run away from that. People will ask him to say what happened to those promises.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, just in closing, a big issue has been Chamisa attacking the Electoral Commission. Mr. Mnangagwa yesterday said that, Chamisa, you were part of that parliamentary committee that elected these members of the committee of the Electoral Commission, and now you are attacking them. I saw that there was an editorial in the Herald that probably Chamisa thought that by selecting these candidates that they would aid the MDC to become government. Do you think that these comments are fair? Just in closing.
Well, what Chamisa has acknowledged is that he was part of the panel that interviewed these people. And I do not think, I would not want to believe that anybody would want to do it with the hope that they would aid him to get into power. But maybe have a sympathetic ear to his ideology and causes. But as to the fairness or not of that, I think what is important is to recognize that the election is run according to a set of rules, and that they need to be respected, regardless of whether you like that person or not.
Jeffrey, your take on this, because what hinges on this as well is whether the results will be accepted or not.
Okay. I think it would be irrational for President Mnangagwa to expect Chamisa to keep quiet, even though he was part of the committee that he elected those officials. When things that are bad are happening on his side, obviously he has to speak out.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. And that is Jeffrey Moore, international freelance journalist, as well as Foster Dongozi, who is the Secretary General of the Zimbabwean Union of Journalists. One story that we did not get to touch on was a certain story that looked at in one of the regions where you have a parliamentary candidate that has taken the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission to court over the ballot paper, saying that his face does not appear properly, and for that reason he feels that the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission has failed him and he may be prejudiced in these elections. We'll have to wait and see what the court comes to and whether indeed this will have an impact on the elections or not. And you were saying earlier on that you don't think that this will happen. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll continue with our special coverage of the Zimbabwean elections, an historic election that takes place on the 30th of July tomorrow. Goodbye.